Hi, everyone. It's Christine Kopr with Sotheby's Realty reporting to you from Uvita in Costa Rica. And today we're going to do our December market update. The numbers are in, so we're going to take a look at how the last month of the year fared in the Vancouver real estate market. And then we are also going to take a look at a year in review, the policy changes, and how did the year overall compare to years in the past. And we're going to look all the way back to 2015. Stay tuned and check that out. Also, I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed to my YouTube channel and made sure you signed up for notifications when I post new content, as well as on my IG page. Let's get started. And oh, by the way, before we do, just wanted to wish you all a very happy new year. All the best for 2024. It's great to see you again, and we're really looking forward to this year because I think it's going to be quite an interesting and potentially exciting year. As always, here we are looking at the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver for 2023, the entire year in review here, but we're going to hone in on December's numbers. December ended up with 1,345 sales. Now that was down 21% month over month, so very slow compared to November, but it is December. It is very typical for this time of year to slow down. It's actually also an interesting time for buyers this time of year because it tends to be more of a buyer's market mentality going on before we head into the new year and the busy spring market, which we usually anticipate. Now, the sales that we had in December, they were down from November, but they were also up 3.2% year over year. And if you recall me talking about it before, last fall or last winter was probably one of the worst in terms of market sentiment. It was not looking good and sales were really, really low. So the fact is, we have higher interest rates than we did then, but sales are better. And that's really positive news. Now, in the context of it all, yeah, it's measly. December's 1,300 sales is 36 or almost 35% below the 10-year average. So things are slow. And we're going to see that when we do the annual review later on in this video. So make sure you stay tuned. But overall, into context, we're still fairly well, especially when we get through the rest of this data and see how prices fared. So in terms of new listings, because everyone has, or I wouldn't say everyone, but lots of people in the market have been concerned about more mortgages rolling over, et cetera, and that we might see a piling of listings coming on the market. Now, of course, December is a quiet time of year. Not a lot of people list. They wait until the new year and typically the spring market, but we've been doing fairly well. 1,327 new homes were listed in December. That's down 60% month over month, of course, November, and up 9.9% year over year. So a little bit more inventory coming on the market, and especially to measly like December, not the best time to be listing. That's down 22 or almost 23% below the 10-year average in terms of new listings. Active listings, this is a number we really have to pay attention to as we move forward into the new year, because if we have a lot more inventory accumulating and our sales stay weak, then we will see an accumulation of inventory, and then that will result in more downward pressure on prices. We have 8,802 homes currently available for sale or did at the end of December on the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. So that's down almost 20% month over month, up 13% year over year. So from a year over year perspective, there is a bit more inventory, a bit more to choose from, which is something that we really need because sellers don't come on the market unless they have something to buy. And so when we talk about low sales, yes, they're impacted by the interest rates, but part of it is also due to the fact that we just don't have a lot of inventory to stimulate more sales. So it may not always be just a factor of demand because sometimes it's just not the supply that you're looking for. We're hanging under that 9,000 homes available for sale, and it's about flat with the 10-year average. It's pretty average, so no big panic or hysteria going on here at the end of the year. Months of inventory, as you know, it's one of my favorite tools to take a look and predict potentially where prices are headed. We're sitting at 6.5 months of inventory. Now, if you remember, 4 months and below, so less than 4 months of inventory is considered a seller's market. There's just not enough inventory we can sell through so quickly for that demand. 6 months and above of inventory is considered a buyer's market, and 4 to 6 is considered a balanced market, and they rarely hang around for very long. So we're sitting at 6.5 months of inventory in December. You can see we've been trending up into this months of inventory over the last few months, and as a result, we are starting to see downward pressure on prices, which are reflected in the benchmark below in red if the price has gone down, yellow if it's gone up. And speaking of which, so technically we are in a buyer's market. However, I would say in many cases, if the property is fairly decent, well presented in a good location, we're actually more in a balanced market with little bits of price decreases. You can see it, we're just chipping away about 1% every month. It's nothing major. There's been this slower decrease or downward pressure on prices, but it's relatively flat-ish. So no drastic downward pressure. And to be honest, potentially may not come any further if we've hit peak interest rates. So something to really think about if you're thinking about getting into the market, because we know that there are tons of buyers sitting on the sidelines, one from a psychological perspective, the other from an interest rate perspective, but it doesn't really appear that the sky is falling. In terms of months of inventory at 6.5, it's just up 1.5% month over month and up 14% year over year. The benchmark price in the Greater Vancouver area is 1.168 million. That's down 1.4%. So barely any change. It's almost flat. Just again, that minor decrease, but we're up 5% year over year. Granted, the percentage we were up year over year was higher because we were compared to different points in time of last year, but we're still ending up positive over this year, which I think is a big surprise for a lot of people. Many market forecasters are predicting severe downward pressure on prices, and we can see that we've ended up over the year, which is really surprising, and it shows how resilient and how in demand the Metro Vancouver market really is. Having a look at Metro Vancouver, we're going to look at detached homes, attached townhomes, and condos, and then we're going to actually look at Vancouver West Side and East Side so you have a real understanding of what's going on there. I'm going to zip right over to the benchmark prices. For a Metro detached home, you're looking at 1.964. That's up 7.7% year over year. Townhouses for Metro Vancouver are 1,072,000, up 6.5% year over year. And condos are sitting at 751,000, up 5.6 year over year. So again, this is a broad Metro Vancouver. Obviously, there's been some month over month slight decreases, but overall flat. Now we're going to take a look at West Side and East Side because obviously those two markets are completely different. Vancouver West, a detached home is going to cost 3.465 million. That is up 11.4% year over year, believe it or not, and just down 0.1%. So flat month over month. A townhouse is 1.424, up 6.7 year over year and just down 2.5% month over month. And your condos on the west side are 816, up 1.9% and down 3% year over year. So a little bit more interest rate sensitivity on that west side product for those attached condos. How does it look on the east side? Detached homes on the east side, you're looking at a benchmark of 1.857. So a lot easier to get into versus the west side, which is basically double, up 10% year over year and only down 0.6% month over month. Your townhome on the east side is sitting at 1,072,000, up 4.3% year over year, down 3.5% month over month. And your attached condos are sitting at 693, so under 700,000 and up 3% year over year, but gave away a little bit at 1.8% month over month. So you can see we ended up the year in a positive, even after experiencing interest rate increases this summer. And now we are potentially in what feels like peak interest rates moving forward. So interesting times if you're thinking about getting into the market or listing your home. What are the market drivers right now? Well, a big one is consumer confidence. How are people out there feeling about their job security, about their finances, and are they able to afford a home? Everybody wants to own a home if they can. Consumer confidence was moderating. You know, there was some fear there at the end of the fall. Potentially that's starting to moderate, get a little bit more positive. While unemployment has crept up a little bit in BC, overall, you know, if you're feeling good about your job and looking that you can see some of the interest rates, we might be at the top coming down. This could very much well be the time to be getting into the market before everybody does if interest rates start decreasing. So I think consumer confidence is potentially increasing, but it's not exuberant. I think that if you're talking to me about a month and a half ago, I think that there has been a slight shift and we're starting to feel like there is some more positivity coming forward for the spring. It is still an interesting market, whether you're a buyer or a seller, so please keep that in mind. Inflation and economic activity. Inflation has been slowing. It's getting where Bank of Canada wants to go, and it's why they've said that we could potentially start to see interest rate increases. But of course, that is 100% dependent if inflation stays where it needs to be. We do have some interesting global economic issues happening. Obviously, there's issues over industrial. There's also issues with shipping and attacks on shipping containers and having to reroute supplies, which then could create more logistics issues. And then, of course, increases in inflation. Everything has to stay in that band range for the BOC to keep interest rates flat. Some market forecasters say that we could see rates coming down as early as spring. I say if it is, like, woohoo, like you've scored the lottery, but I don't personally believe that's going to be the case. That's my bet. If anything, perhaps probably later this year, if in 2024. Interest rates, of course, we're just talking about how we could potentially be at peak rates. And of course, fixed rates, they went bananas. The bond market did, which controls fixed rates in October. That's eased off over 1%. We'll take a look at that. And of course, inventory is increasing, but we're still at historical levels. Wait till you see the comparisons going back to 2015. Here's a change in the CPI. So just some visuals. Yes, inflation is coming down. This is great. We got to get down to this 2% band range here. So we're still a little elevated, but headed in the right direction. Unemployment, as you can see, in terms of Canada, stayed flat at 5.8%. In BC, we've had unemployment increase just a smidge from 5.3 to 5.6. While we are not a big proponent of people losing their jobs, it's what the Bank of Canada wants to see. So we have less demand in the system, creating less inflation. Discount mortgage rates. So this is actually after the discounts. You can see where variables are sitting at today and how fixed have taken a real turn. Obviously, we're still higher than we were last spring, but they're headed in the right direction. So let's keep our fingers crossed and see where this goes. And if you are renewing, start 6 months in advance if you have an existing mortgage. If you're thinking about getting in the market, please start talking to your broker, because there can be some real fluctuations that you could take advantage of coming up in the spring. Here's a look at that 5-year government bond. As you can see, from October till now, we've had a real steady decrease, and we're actually getting close to numbers we saw last spring when the market was actually very active and interest rates sometimes got up under the 5% rate, which would be very positive for our real estate market. The other big news that has happened, and it's to be determined how it's going to impact the market in the future, is Bill 44 was passed, and you can build up to 6 units on single family lots depending on their size and their location to a frequent transit stop. So the cities are going to have to update their bylaws by June. So every city with a population of over 5,000 people, they're not going to be able to prevent you from building multifamily. Of course, you can still purchase single family, but you're going to have the opportunity on lots over 3,000 square feet to build up to 4 units. Some of the details, and some very important details, are yet to be determined because cities are in charge of this part. The province didn't actually make this decision, but they put it onto the cities. Are those units going to have to be secured market rentals, or can they be stratified and sold off? And that is going to have a major impact on how single family lots potentially will be revalued in the future. That is something to keep in mind. Every city is going to probably be different. We got to see how this plays out in June, when all the cities and municipalities have to update their zoning bylaws and give us more details on how it's going to impact future development. And so here's just also some of the transit-oriented development areas that was also announced, that up to 20 stories within 200 meters of transit-oriented development areas. And of course, it changes depending on the type of hub, then, bus exchanges, and including West Coast Express as well. So if you want some more information about this, please reach out to me. And here's just a map to give you an idea of the areas that are going to be impacted over the next several decades as developers and the market conditions are favorable enough to help develop out this plan, because there are major factors that impact development. Just because you zone it doesn't necessarily mean the economics make sense. Let's take a look at the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver 8-year review going back to 2015 to see how things are looking. But as we look back into that review, let's just see what happened in 2023. Forget all the things that have happened in years past, like foreign buyer taxes, etc. Number one, we had rental increases capped below inflation. That was a change that happened, came out of left field. The empty homes tax was increased. We had the removal of strata rental restrictions. We had the implementation of the home buyer rescission period known as the cooling off period. We had $500 million committed to not-for-profit affordable housing. Hopefully that actually ever gets spent and homes are created. We streamlined provincial permits. Interesting. We'll see what happens if that's used to help offset some of the provincial guidelines for development in cities that don't actually want it. A renter's tax credit of $400 a year. The removal of age restrictions for 55 plus buildings, short-term rental restrictions that came out at the end of the year, and of course, Bill 44, 46, and 47 with multi-unit development on single family and transit-oriented areas, and some development financing changes. Like, Wow, there's a lot of change just in 2023, and it's actually hard to keep on top of it because there's so many rules and regulations and changes involved in all of these things that impact our housing market. So we'll see how it's going to play out in the future. But there's your summary. If you go back to like 2016, we had foreign buyers tax, and then we also had the stress test was implemented in 2018, which you're going to see the impacts of in the upcoming slides, which also kind of give you an idea of why interest rates are such a big player on today's market reality. Here's our annual sales. This is the amount of sales that happened in the entire year from 2015 to 2023. Like, wow, if you go back to 2015, 2016, 2017, those were huge. Look at the market activity back then. In fact, if you remove them from the page and you went to 2018, which is when the stress test came in and the foreign buyers tax, you can see the impact on sales almost halved from 2015 to 2018. And then it slowly started to increase in 2019. We start to see interest rates decreasing a bit. And then, of course, in 2020, they were just chopped off at the knees. And we had a wild time. In 2018, it was the lowest sales in the region since the year 2000, which is crazy. And of course, 2021, COVID was the only year that surpassed 2015, which was the highest sales on record for the real estate board of Greater Vancouver. Like, unbelievable the amount of sales that happened. 43,000 sales in 2021. 2022 tapered off, and 2023 actually didn't end up too far behind 2022. We are down 41% in terms of sales from 2021, and we're just off not too much from 2022 in terms of last year's sales. And this year's sales of 26,000 is 23% or 24% below the 10-year average in terms of annual sales. So we're actually hanging in there, considering the fact that we have interest rates at the highest level we have had in like 20 years. It's pretty incredible to see. In terms of listings, how many listings were available for sale? Here's an opportunity to see in 2021, while we had lowest inventory to deal with demand, you can see how many homes were actually listed and sold. Absolutely incredible. This is a unicorn of a year. Didn't even happen back here in these really big years of 2015 and 2016. 2019 was one of the lowest. Here's one of the highest. And we're just sitting at actually at one of the lowest now at 50,893. That's down 7.5% year over year, down 20% from 2021, and down 10.5% from a 10-year average. But overall, not too shabby. Like, we're still sitting in the 50s. Obviously, we're not hitting the 60s, but that's a unicorn of a year. Low level listings, not a lot of inventory coming on the market, which also impacts the amount of sales. If there's nothing to buy, no one's going to be selling and listing their home, as well as, obviously market influences like the interest rate. But so far, things are looking fairly resilient, all things considered. The benchmark price from 2015 to 2023, I think this is an absolutely spectacular graph. Despite the fluctuations in the markets, the things that have happened here after the stress test was enacted, and then of course, interest rates being increased over 5 points over several years, year over year. So from last December to this December, we are up 5%. In 2022, the peak in the benchmark price hit 1.228. And since then, we've been trailing back and we ended up the year at 1.168. There's been some decreases or a bit of downward pressure on price. But regardless, here's an opportunity to put it into perspective. The market always has its swings. It corrects and it overshoots. And in terms of a long-term perspective, the market in the real estate board of Greater Vancouver has been extraordinarily resilient. While our sales end up quite low, it's been a very strong year for the Vancouver housing market, considering that mortgage rates have been the highest that they've been in over a decade. While forecasters and myself included were thinking there was going to be downward pressure on prices, which we have experienced, the fact is that year over year to the end of 2022, we've had a 5% plus gain across all home prices for all product types, as you saw, for example, when we were taking a look at detached, west side versus east side, etc. So it's been an extraordinary year for the real estate board of Greater Vancouver. I thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this update, and I really look forward to connecting with all of you. If you would like to have a personal consultation or get more specific information for your particular circumstance, i.e. if you're thinking about selling, which this could end up being an excellent market in all things considered. Obviously, it's not an exuberant market, but I think it could be a fairly active spring market. Please reach out to me for a consultation. And if you're thinking of buying, now might be the time, especially if we have interest rates decrease in the upcoming year. This could be the time to secure a great property with the time to do your due diligence and not have to potentially get into a more of competitive marketplace. I'm Christine Kopr with Sotheby's Realty in Vancouver. I look forward to connecting with you in the future. And once again, I wish you all the best in 2024. Make sure you like and subscribe and have a great day.